Welcome to Renewable New Mexico, a program about the people and companies that make our state an epicenter for renewable energy innovation. My name is Sean Wells and I'm your host, and today's topic is growing a renewable business. It's the third part, and the title of this segment is Attitude. And to help us explore it is our first guest today, Kevin Basilick, co-founder of Consolidated Solar Technologies right here in Albuquerque. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us.
Thanks for having me,
Appreciate
Sean.
your time. The name, Consolidated Solar Technologies, were you part of the naming?
A little bit, yeah.
Can you explain the consolidated part of that?
It was sort of twofold. I think we wanted to consolidate our product offerings, so have residential all the way up to commercial and industrial scale, as well as consolidate a lot of the processes involved. So we provide turnkey solution, design, engineering, installation, preparation of the permitting, utility applications, prepare some of the tax paperwork, and sort of guide the customer through the process. That was the intent, and tacked on some additional words so we'd have a snappy three-letter acronym like any clean tech company
and
should,
it is
right?
catchy. I've seen it on I-25, just like ding,
Yeah.
stands out. So you had mentioned you do both commercial and residential, and I know there's a huge difference in those kinds of projects. Can you talk about the challenges and the differences of those?
Sure. The big challenge in the residential sector is really managing the customer's expectations, and that starts with trying to educate them and be a resource for them. There's a lot of questions, as you can imagine. The layperson, the homeowner coming in and looking, exploring a solar energy system isn't necessarily familiar with the technology. They're not familiar with the numerous tax credits at the federal and state level. They're not necessarily sure how the system works from a technical standpoint, as well as what that means for the economics. How does it save them power, right? What is the value of every kilowatt hour that the system produces? What is a kilowatt hour? So those are some of the challenges in the beginning, is really explaining how the system works technically, how it works economically, and guiding them through the process. On the commercial side, that's a different arena altogether. Generally speaking, you're dealing with large commercial or industrial facilities, business owners. You're talking to a CEO, a CFO. They're concerned more about the bottom line. There's less of a social impetus for a lot of these companies. They look at this like any other capital expenditure. They want to know what it costs, how much money it's going to save them, what the return on investment is, and they make a financial decision. Any of the soft benefits, as they like to call them, fostering renewable energy
Soft
and
benefits,
sustainability,
like
the marketing aspect associated with that, generally gets weighed, later and is secondary to the real economic benefit.
Are there any tax incentives for small businesses or companies?
Sure. There's a large tax credit at the federal level. That's the 30% federal investment tax credit that's applicable for both homeowners and business owners. Depending on the size of the system, there's numerous tax credits in play for businesses or large industrial solar deployments, but it varies depending on the system size. The very large systems tend to have more favorable tax credits at both the federal and state level than a small residential system could enjoy.
Well, speaking of small residential systems, I would love to get some solar cells up on my home, but I'm pretty intimidated. I've got sort of the perceptions that were left over from a couple of decades ago. If there's homeowners watching that are thinking about looking at some of the companies here in Albuquerque, how do they judge a company that would be appropriate for a residential home?
Well, I think a big part of it is doing your homework. So understanding and familiarizing yourself a little bit with the technology, what's out there, and what that means. The solar industry globally is having a tough time right now, particularly the manufacturers. There's a drastic oversupply of panels, and there's a lot of pressure.
So that's good for the consumers.
It's good for the consumer. It's definitely a buyer's market for solar right now. So the installers and the consumers are benefiting from that. But the flip side of that is some of these manufacturers may not be around in the long haul to honor warranties. Unfortunately, shot solar is a sort of glaring example of that. And a lot of manufacturers are under a tremendous amount of pressure. So do your homework, take a look at the line of products that the solar integrator is offering, How strong are those companies? Do you expect those companies to be around to honor their warranties moving forward? And from an installation standpoint, I think you want to check references, call references, see how many solar installations they've done, and talk to homeowners that have gotten systems from them. There's a lot of good solar companies in Albuquerque, New Mexico in general, with a lot of experience, so it's not necessarily an easy decision, but I think you should do your homework. Don't necessarily go for the cheapest guy out there, and go for value rather than price.
Those are all great points. Thank you for that. I will take that under consideration. Right. So for the homeowners and the small companies that are looking to invest in solar technology, there's a lot of creative financing. Can you touch on some of those options?
Sure, absolutely. Okay. As I mentioned, a large extent of the payback for a solar system, be it residential or commercial, is predicated upon the ability to use both the federal and state tax credits. So from a business perspective, that's not always easy to do. For example, you could have a nonprofit organization, you could have a church, you could have a hospital, you could have a municipal project, those types of things. So all sort of creative financing mechanisms have popped up to finance those, where some third party owns the system, works in partnership with a company like ours to do the design, engineering, and installation. They'll monetize all the federal and state tax credits, any utility rebates or incentives associated with that, and sell the power or lease the system to the end user. And the idea being that the energy they're saving by having the solar system on their facility is offsetting any lease or payment for the power. That model has been adapted slightly to go after the residential sector. So you're seeing very large organizations springing up with huge amounts of funding behind them to use that model and deploy that in the residential sector. And that's starting to trickle down to the smaller solar markets like New Mexico. So you're seeing a combination of sort of same as cash financing programs coupled with some attractive bank loans that have easier underwriting requirements, aren't necessarily tied with a mortgage to the property. You are seeing leasing starting to dominate in other larger solar markets. California, for example, now is at the point where more homeowners are financing their systems than buying them cash, and that's usually in the form of a lease. And all of that structure really comes from the commercial sector, and it has sort of shifted down to the residential sector. So there's options out there for homeowners.
That's fantastic. I had no idea the breadth of options there.
Absolutely.
There's something for everyone, it sounds like.
Yeah, there is.
That makes me curious. You obviously have a great business sensibility about you, but everyone I've talked to, it's sort of, even if you come from a practical background into starting this foundation, it seems like it sort of creeps in. The passion for solar technology creeps into all of the guests I've talked to today.
Sure.
Has it affected you personally, and did you go into it because you were interested in solar technology?
I was always interested in the technical aspects of renewable energy. My dad's a physicist, a German physicist no less, so I sort of grew up being indoctrinated with sort of energy efficiency. As you realize, Germany's a huge market for solar now, so there's always been some ties to family and colleagues back in Germany and getting some influence there. But certainly I think you need to be passionate about it to do the job well, and there's a huge industry of incredibly passionate advocates for renewable energy here in New Mexico. I think we're fortunate in that regard. Mm-hmm. But it's a difficult business. There's a lot of challenges in getting these projects done, and a lot of frustrations dealing with the PRC, the regulatory bodies, the sort of battles, if you will, with the utility company, mm-hmm. and a lot of bureaucracy for getting a solar system permitted and installed, for example. So it's not without its setbacks, let's put it that way, and I think the passion helps.
Have you embraced it personally?
I have. I have a system on my home.
And what do you think?
I love it.
Yeah, no complaints.
I get a check instead of a bill every month.
Nice.
And so that's typical of a residential customer, as they go through the process, and it takes some time, and there's frustrations that are inevitable. But when they see their meter spinning backwards, there's a big smile, and when they get their first check in the mail from the utility, there's an even bigger smile.
Nice birthday present.
Right, exactly.
Where would you like to see the future of this industry in Albuquerque head? What's missing, and what can we anticipate? Sure.
Well, we have a good start. There's some large companies that are headquartered here that are pretty influential in the solar industry in general. Two in particular, Unirac, which is a manufacturer of racking and framing components for solar applications, both residential and commercial. One of the leaders in North America. We're fortunate to have them here in our backyard, so to speak. Array Technologies is another notable one that makes trackers for larger utility scale projects. And then there's good integration companies and good advocacy organizations here in the state that push the policy and get the message out there about solar. So I'd like to see that developed further. We'd like to see more manufacturers come into this area and foster the growth that way. We'd like to see somebody come in and get back into Schatz factory and open those doors again.
And for regular consumers, what is the minimum you would like to see every Albuquerquean look at in terms of solar technology for their home?
Well, we've got a ways to go in that regard. If you look at the percentage of households that have solar in Albuquerque, in my opinion, it's not nearly enough. So certainly encourage anybody that has a site that's suitable for solar to take advantage of the incentives while they're there and look at it seriously. It's a good time to buy. As we mentioned, it's sort of a buyer's market from a cost standpoint, and now there's more and more financing options coming online. So it's important that we get the message out there.
It looks like a bright future, though.
It is, absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
Maybe we can speak about my panels.
Great, yeah.
Get on my roof and see what options we have there.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate you bringing your energy to the program today.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back with our next guest. Welcome back to Renewable New Mexico. Today's topic is Growing a Renewable Business, Part 3, Attitude. Our second guest is Regan Madison, co-founder of a local biofuel cooperative, Bountiful Energies Co-op. Thank you for joining us, Regan.
Thank you.
Well, you're actually involved in many, many different things, the co-op being one of them. But what originally brought you to New Mexico?
Well, I came to New Mexico about 7 years ago. I was living in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was farming at the time. And I came to visit my aunt who had a farm in northern New Mexico and realized sustainable farming wasn't really an option for me in Phoenix with the heat and the climate the way that it is. So I applied for a position at a local organic farm, and I was accepted as an intern and decided to move to Albuquerque and began a business degree at the University of New Mexico as well.
Great, so your interest started very early.
Yeah, I've been involved with sustainability and renewable energy for about 8 or 9 years now.
And that was really the first moment that sparked your interest in renewable energy, that exposure to the farm?
Farming wasn't exactly what got me interested. I think that the moment that I can really see as catalyzing my interest was when I was 18 years old. I was part of a foreign exchange program through Mexico, and when the students came back from Mexico, we visited Palo Verde Nuclear Power Plant in Phoenix, and I realized how much of our energy was being produced by nuclear there, and I decided that it wasn't really the best thing for me to power my vehicle on when I got a new car, so I got into biodiesel that way instead. I actually wound up purchasing a biodiesel fueled car, and that was kind of what sparked my interest.
So now you're in Albuquerque,
Mm-hmm.
and you're actually involved with several different groups that have a renewable energy theme. I know you're doing some work with NMSEA. What are you doing there?
New Mexico Solar Energy Association is a nonprofit where I work. When I came to Albuquerque, New Mexico, I was interested in biodiesel, like I said, and I started helping to organize some workshops that NMSEA was sponsoring to help people in the local community produce biodiesel for themselves. And as part of that training program, I was introduced to people through the office and the nonprofit, and I applied to work in their office, and now I'm also working in their office, as well as offering the biodiesel workshops aside in my own personal business.
So how has that influenced the work that you're doing outside of NMSEA?
NMSEA is a very impactful organization in our local community. They definitely have cultivated a broader understanding of different kinds of renewable energy for me, and have definitely supported the work that I'm doing and helped activate and sort of deepen my understanding in that way.
I want to hear more about this biofuel cooperative. Could you tell someone who's never heard of a biofuel cooperative what both of those parts mean?
So Bountiful Energies, the cooperative that I'm a part of and a co-founder of, is a renewable energy company in the way that we have a vision that we would like to see energy independence for all of Albuquerque, and what that means to us specifically focusing on biodiesel right now, bio meaning made from plant material, and fuels obviously applying to all different kinds of energy sources, but in this particular instance, biodiesel applying to diesel-fueled engines or generators. Anything can run on, any diesel engine can run on biodiesel. But specifically, we had a vision for energy independence of all of Albuquerque, and biodiesel is one particular element that we focus on now because as someone who's interested in agriculture, you can fuel farming equipment. Diesel engines make up most of the high-powered machinery that can be used for agriculture, for ambulances, fire trucks, transport trucks, semis that bring goods across the country, school buses, city buses, all kinds of things like that. So the basic necessities of society can pretty much be powered or fueled from diesel. And if you use biodiesel, that's one way that you take some of the productive capability and put it back into the hands of the community instead of making that something, instead of fuel being something that must be accessed outside of your local community, maybe abroad in areas that are politically unstable, or also reducing the cost of those energy inputs. So our idea is that we would like to see relocalization of energy supplies, and biofuels are one way that we address those. One of the basic needs of society in our local area.
So is the organization doing hands-on workshops? Is it sort of a grassroots kind of thing, or are you more about spreading this message and getting people excited about the concept?
So it's all of that. The Biofuels Cooperative, as a cooperative, there are 7 principles of a cooperative that make it different from other kinds of corporations. And in New Mexico, a cooperative is actually a for-profit company. It's not a nonprofit. In other places, it might be. In New Mexico, it's basically a grassroots organization usually that starts off as individuals with a stake and a collective interest, pooling their collective resources together in order to pursue and manifest a vision that they may have, and in our instance, that is energy. And so it started as a grassroots organization. I basically came to New Mexico with a diesel vehicle that I didn't have fuel for, because in Phoenix, where I had been living, it was $1 cheaper per gallon to get diesel fuel, biodiesel fuel at the pump. And in New Mexico, there was no supplies available. So I thought to myself, oh, well, I'll just make it. But, it's not always that easy just to make your own fuel. So it did definitely start as a grassroots project. I got involved with the person who was offering the NMSEA workshops at that time, and he trained me to make biodiesel. We got together with others that had graduated from that course, and we built equipment so that we could make it in our own garages, using waste vegetable oil from local restaurants. So we were taking waste out of the local community and translating that into something that we could use to power our vehicles. And yeah,
that's so inspiring. So you took the education that NMSEA gave you, and you built a business on that, essentially. Mm-hmm. And what's been the response to what the cooperative so far?
It's really varied. There's a lot of ways that people can participate, and we address a lot of different needs and a lot of different desires through our business. Since we are cooperative, our desire is to benefit the members of our organization. So people have buy-in, people get involved with our organization because they have a say and a stake in what we do, and they also get to influence what we do. So the members are the people that benefit from what we do, and we make fuel more affordable to local communities. We've actually consulted with the university. We've helped them produce a solar-powered mobile biodiesel reactor that they could power a solar-generating van that they would take to events and power events, sound equipment and things like that at local events, and also just to educate the population. That's what we would really like to see, is people feel empowered to be able to do these things for themselves.
Yeah, you had said that you wanted to make your own fuel, and you realized, well, maybe it's not as simple as me making my own fuel, and then you went out and got the education. But did you find that it was simpler than maybe like anyone could do it if they took the time to learn it?
Yeah, and it's just like anything, you have to learn. And exactly, it's not the most challenging thing in the world. It does, require some math and some chemistry and definitely a lot of desire to do it. But there are plans on the internet, the type of biodiesel processing station that we use is called an Appleseed reactor, and there's plans available. It's Appleseed, like Johnny Appleseed would spread his apple seeds all over, and these plans are available open source to people that have the interest. You can look it up online and you can find out how to build one for yourself. You can also purchase them online from different businesses. We actually also help people build them as part of our services that we offer through our cooperative.
And you don't mind getting dirty. I've heard you throw on the overalls and do your own gardening, and so part of it is not being afraid to get dirty. And
you definitely can't be afraid to get dirty. That's part of it. I think that I never really planned to get dirty. I think when I bought my Jetta, I think I was very interested just to support a more sustainable fuel option by purchasing biodiesel, and I was definitely intending to purchase it, not make it myself. But now that I've learned how to make it, it's very empowering, and it is very inspiring to me and to other people who see that anyone can really do this for themselves. So.
And you're saving a lot of money, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. And part of it too is that I do have an interest in agriculture, and we're really interested to see that local farms may be fueled using this as well.
I love the way that you're tying all of your passions together with this energy that you're bringing and this attitude that you're bringing to problem solving, not just complaining.
Yeah, well, I think that that's really what a cooperative intends to do, is really be inclusive to people and to try to educate, people to feel that, to give them the resources, to give them the access to the supplies and the materials and the assistance and the support.
And the education, yeah. What's the one thing you would like to say to other people out there with your energy and enthusiasm and maybe vision, but they don't know how to take that next step?
That the information is online. You can always reach out to people. In my particular instance, it was like a kung fu film. I had to just go after this mentor until he was willing to take me under his wing and show me the way. But it never hurts to ask. You can always ask people, and never quit. Just don't give up. Go ahead and look for the information. And if you're looking for funding, don't think that the only ways that you can do it are right away with a big sum of money. You can pool your resources collectively with other community members. You can write for grants. You can search online and find other people who have done similar things and hybridize it, and ask them if they have resources that they may be able to assist you with.
Well, that's fantastic. That's great. The student has become the master, and now you're in a position where you can pass on that knowledge in a direct way to other people that are inspired. Thank you so much for bringing your beautiful energy to the program and sharing that information with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. That's our program, and thank you for watching. Be sure to join us next week for another episode of Renewable New Mexico. Until next time, this is Sean Wells reminding you, we are all solar powered.